Oh, hey, everybody, we're live. In perfect horror movie fashion, my
Dun,
horror
dun.
film making friend here asked me a question that produced a horrifying response.
A
That is,
horrifying response.
ah! How am I doing? I am scrambling, my friend, and I'm glad to have you here for uh, what is not that all of our conversations haven't been important, but this one, particularly for me and my viewers, is of particular importance because it has to do with the current WGA strike. And I've been a member of Writers Guild, and the SAG-AFTRA pending strike, and you're a member of that union.
Correct, yes.
And I'm really blessed to have you on, Victoria, because I want to somebody who is in the middle of it to explain to everybody else what's going on,
Yeah.
so they could care about it. I hate to put it that way, but uh, in this complicated world, there's all these different messages that get bandied back and forth, and people get lost, and they don't know what to think or believe, and then you get
Absolutely.
things, thrown at them because in the internet there's always that one more thing that can, you know, capture your attention, right? So,
Without a doubt.
so with that, I'm pleased this plunge to have you on. I'm absolutely making certain that this is, as I'm talking, posted appropriately too. Although I've done that before, and there that is, and I'm happy now with that.
Yes.
And Victoria, let me give you a backdrop from my perspective,
Hmm.
right? And I met a gentleman by the name, I mentioned this off camera, in 2011 at Comic Con named Victor McKay,
Hmm.
actor. And at Comic, it's totally accidental. I was with a friend and vlogging colleague. We're sitting next to him. We started a conversation. I said, I've got to vlog this. And one of the specific subtopics of our conversation was, I said, do you have a YouTube channel? Because I'm a pioneer YouTuber. I just no way of getting around that. I am. And so he said no. And he said something to me that was, for me, completely out of left field. He said that it wouldn't make money for me, and I'm paraphrasing, but because he relies on what are called residuals. I didn't know up until that point what residuals were.
Hmm.
And they're those checks that he gets to put it, for all of those Law and Order replays.
Correct. Yes.
And right, again and again and again.
Yes.
Wow. And so
Which
I
can be
thought,
I mean, depending on the success of the show, if you're in a popular episode of a popular show, actors can make tens of thousands of dollars a year off of, one episode of television. Obviously, if you're a recurring guest or series regular, those numbers get even higher. But that income source has all but been eliminated for many of us, because even if you book a network show these days, what happens is, instead of playing reruns on the network channel itself, so say you book an ABC, an NBC show, for example,
mhm,
instead of the reruns playing again on NBC, which is how actors would get their residuals, as soon as it's aired the first time, they send it to their streaming service, to Peacock, and that's where the reruns end. Or sorry, the reruns air. So therefore, you're not getting residuals off of that, even though it was a network show. So even that, yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
criminal.
Hmm. And it's very strategic as well. I mean, there's no, you know what I mean? It's not like they don't know what they're doing and they don't know the effects of what they're doing. It is very strategic because then there's no residuals paid to us off of streaming services.
And
So you can
there
have a hit show off Netflix and you're getting nothing.
and therein
Except
lay
for your
why
initial
we're
pay.
here. And you've done a great job of starting us off regarding the strike, why it happened, and where it's going, and why there may be an actor strike or will. You can give us an update there too. So Victoria, you sort of answered it there. How did this start? Where are we, and where do you expect it to go?
Yeah, so obviously the influx of streaming services and just the birth of streaming services has drastically changed the industry in tons of ways. So what happened, the last time that there was a strike was in 07, 08, and that was about this idea of new media. And that was when, it was very fledgling and no one really understood what was going to happen, at least on the SAG side of things. No one really understood what that meant and what that would look like going forward. But the narrative being spun by the companies was, oh, we're just starting out. We don't have any money. We don't know how this is going to make money. Poor little us. We're like newbies. We can't afford to pay what the big guys are paying. And we found out later, obviously that's not the case at all. Obviously things have changed drastically in the 20 years since then, almost 20 years since then. And as well, like Hulu was born directly afterwards. So like the verbiage and the contract and stuff was very much, AOTPA definitely knew what was going on and the unions didn't, right? And it definitely was worded in such a way as to obviously benefit them and not the union. So we're kind of back in the saddle here now where, like I mentioned, there's a million factors that have come into play. But basically, the vast majority of your working actor is making their living off of residuals, right? Because we're getting paid scale when we book a job. And, as an actor, you book a few jobs a year. That's a good year for an actor. It's really difficult, right? We're auditioning tons, and if you have a year with 5 guest star roles, that's a great year. But you're only making, $5,000 from those guest star roles, unless you had unless you're top of show and you're working for a week, then you're making a little bit more. But obviously, clearly not enough to live off of. But as I mentioned, residuals can be, tens of thousands of dollars, especially depending on the show and the popularity of it and how many times it replays. But in the streaming era, there's no one is compensated for the success of a show. You get your scale, and this goes for writers as well. It's the same thing. It's the same, the same struggles all around in terms of reduced pay and not getting a share of the success of things. So you could have the #1 show on Netflix. You could have a terrible little janky show on Netflix. It doesn't matter. There's no reward for your show doing well because you're not sharing in the residuals. And because these tech companies are very protective of their data, they don't want to share their numbers, right? So how can they calculate? That's part of the problem in and of itself, because there's no way to calculate the success of it because they won't really share the numbers with us. So you're not getting paid for anything other than your initial fee. You're not getting the residuals. And like I mentioned, because every network channel now, in this era has their own version of a streaming service at this point, right? You have Peacock for NBC, you have whatever, Paramount Plus for Paramount, all these things. So same thing with them. Even if you book a network show, they're only playing the initial run on their network, on actual television, and then the rest of it's going to their streaming service. So you're not seeing residuals off of that either. So basically, you've taken away a huge source of income for the average working person, to where it's now even more unsustainable to have a career doing this as before. And with the writers, there's compounding factors as well. So they have the same issue with residuals. We also have, what's happened is the run, it used to be standard 22 to 24 episodes was pretty much standard for a season of a show. A season of a network show would have 24 episodes. You get your initial 13 sometimes if it's a new show, and then you get your back 9 to bring you up to 24. So what we see now is 6 episodes for a season, 8 episodes for a season, 10 episodes for a season, 13 sometimes, right? But we're seeing much smaller seasons, so that means you're getting paid for fewer episodes to write. But what's happening as well is that they're condensing the timeline, and they're condensing the size of the writers' rooms. So you now have way fewer writers doing the work. You have them doing it under circumstances where it's way more rushed, way less time to do it. You have them doing it in a vacuum, oftentimes in these mini rooms, where they're doing the season of the show before it's been picked up to series, in the hope that it will be. But they're basically breaking down. It's called breaking the season, right? Kind of coming up with the arcs of the season. And then the writers are going on their own separate way to write the episode, not even reading sometimes the episode before or after their own. They're just set off in the vacuum to write it. How is that productive? So of course that's not going to lead, A, that's a terrible way to write. B, that's not going to lead to good quality content. C, you have them, a lot of times they're not even being paid because the writer's room has broken down before they've had the chance to write their episode. So they're only being paid for that initial time, and then the work they have to do afterwards of actually writing their episode, they're not even being paid for.
Quick question. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Magnum PI, which unfortunately is seeing its 5th and last season, in part because of the strike. But I noticed that the writers, and what they would do is they would take essentially one large episode, but essentially break it up into 2. And so a lot of part 1s and part 2s. And I noticed that a lot. Is that the reason why they do that?
It could be. I'm not familiar. Every writer's room is going to be somewhat different. Obviously, Magnum PI isn't a new show, so that wouldn't be subject to the same kind of situation where they're writing it before it's been picked up. Obviously, it would be subsequent seasons of an existing show. So it could be, though. I mean, it could. Who knows? It could just be a stylistic choice. But certainly what you're seeing is basically fewer writers doing more of the work in less of the time for way less money. So that has. Also what we've seen too is basically, I remember reading this a while ago, years ago, about the showrunner crisis, which is that you have a lot of really inexperienced people becoming showrunners, people who haven't actually seen the process going through production. Because what happens is these mini rooms happen, they write the season of the show, then they're fired. The end, you're done, and then that show may or may not get picked up and go on to be produced for the season, but they are never there. They're not there for the production of it. They're not there for the post production of it. So they have no on-set experience. They have no experience with actually producing television. And then when you're trying to find showrunners to pull from, you have all these writers who have no on-set experience. They have no production experience. So
could you tell my people what a showrunner does?
Yeah, so the showrunner is kind of the person that steers the ship of the show. If you're in other industries, it'd kind of be like a project manager, right? The project manager of that TV show. So oftentimes they're the creator, and they're obviously also a writer on it, but they're also the producer. So for those, like for me, for what I do in indie film, it's very much the same thing, right? Like when I'm doing my own projects, I'm producing it, I'm writing it, I'm running the show, I'm steering the ship. It's like that, but just for TV.
Like Lexi, for example.
Yeah, exactly. With all the projects I've done. So you have to have not just the writing skills, but also the production skills of what it means to be a producer, what it means to, hire cast and crew, what it means to location scout and sign off on locations, what it means to, payroll and permits and all, all the things involved with filming and producing, which are significant and, completely different from the skills required to actually write. So a showrunner has to do all that stuff. But what happens is when you're having somebody be a showrunner that has zero experience with the producing aspect of it, obviously that's not a formula that's setting anybody up to succeed. So what used to happen is the process of a writer being involved for the whole thing was a learning process for them, right? They see what it's like to actually produce an episode of the thing that they're writing. They understand what that entails. That in turn informs their writing. It's kind of an education, and it's part of the process. So when you're preventing writers from having that experience, you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot as an industry, because you're not giving people the experience they need to be able to go on and do bigger, better things, right? And to steer ships of their own and be in those positions. So it was very interesting, having that knowledge of this showrunner crisis we've had for years, and then understanding where that's coming from, which is this, the mini rooms, and the fact that writers, again, are not on set. They're not there during the production process. They're not getting that skill set or understanding how all of that works. So yeah, there's a lot of factors at play. Obviously then there's also the AI conversation, which is affecting everything. No one wants to be replaced by computers, or more for the writers specifically, what they're worried about, I think a lot of writers I've spoken to, is, basically studios using AI to write a shitty first draft of something, and then the writer being hired to fix this AI's shitty first draft, when the writer could have done a better job of just doing the whole thing from the beginning, right? No one wants to be a copy editor for a computer's script, right? That's not what we want to do. So you have those it's residuals. It's for writers, again, it's the mini rooms, it's the size of the rooms and the duration of the seasons, and it's AI. For actors, it's residuals as well, it's AI as well. We also have concerns around self-tapes. So what's happened since COVID, basically the Southeast market has always kind of used self-tapes because they're a big market and it covers a lot of area. So it means that instead of going in person to audition, you're recording yourself and sending that in as your audition. What happened with COVID, when everything shut down, everything turned to self-tapes, and it's kind of stuck around, right? Because now the studios and the casting directors don't have the expense of a brick and mortar location. They can work from home or work from wherever. So it saves them a ton of money to just get the auditions in, versus having to pay for a location, pay for somebody to run the camera and read with the actors, schedule all that stuff. So it also allows them to see a lot more, to get a lot more tapes in, than people that they could see in person, which is good and bad for actors. But self-tapes in general are good and bad for actors. But what it definitely has done is it's shifted the burden of the cost onto the actor, because now we have to have the lights, we have to have the sound, we have to pay someone to film us or film ourselves, we have to pay someone to read with us, or get our husbands and significant others and roommates and grandmas and whatever to read with us. It's shifted the whole burden of the audition process onto the actors. Whereas before we could just do our preparation, show up and do our audition. Now we have to do the actual audition. And depending on the audition, they can be asking you to do ridiculous things, shoot in your kitchen, shoot in your car, show me this, what they want to see, depending on the circumstances, can be very elaborate. The other thing is the turnaround time and the amount of pages. So sometimes they'll get, 16, 18 pages of sides due within 24 hours. So it's become very unreasonable, a lot of the requests. And so even in the UK, they've already addressed this. They have Actors Equity, their union there, has created some rules around self-tapes in terms of the minimum amount of time required. Like, you have to have at least 72 hours, blah, blah, blah. Weekends don't count, things like this. So actors are looking for some restrictions and around the self-tape situation in terms of the amount of pages that we're being asked to do, the quick turnaround time, all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the main issues that's kind of being addressed as well, or that the base of SAG is concerned with. Are these like burdens being put on us through self-tape? Because again, so you're making less money than ever, you have more expenses than ever. You know what I mean? And the other thing is that because they're seeing more actors, which is great in one hand because you maybe get the chance to get your face in front of a CD that you wouldn't have had the chance to before, but now your percentage chance, like the statistical chance of you booking it, is also way less. So whereas before you may have been 1 of 10 or 1 of 15, now you may be 1 of 400. And also, like, there's no way casting is watching 400 auditions, right? They just don't have time to. So there's some concerns about that as well. There's different camps and different people who have different feelings on, whatever, on those things. But certainly we all can agree that, like, there need to be some regulations in place in terms of the turnaround time and the length of pages and stuff like that. So, yeah.
How come I get the feeling that right now the impact of all this is not well understood? Let me give you an example what's in my head.
Yeah.
I've covered Comic-Con since 2010. And now I'm looking at a Comic-Con that will be it looks to me, a skeleton of itself right now already with Disney, HBO, Marvel. I believe everybody but Warner Brothers pulling out its seams. Now, some would say, well, Zenny, you pay attention to that, you should pay attention to the comics. But then the prices are higher for families now to attend. So you've got that pressure. And it looks like a friend of mine said, I don't know when this is going to be resolved anytime soon. In fact, I had Steve Sue on, who actually knows one of the directors of Magnum PI. And so I'm looking at the horizon and I'm thinking this could significantly, well, it already is, damaging the American culture in terms of what we're used to seeing, where we go. But I don't think that the impacts of what we're experiencing have been fully laid out yet, have they?
No, they haven't. And there's a delay, right? Because that's how it is with production. So you have, so much stuff that's already shot in the can, as we say, being edited and stuff in post now.
Right.
And then they're also, because it is this kind of weird gray area in that by the letter of the law, things that have been written are allowed to shoot. But the reality of production is such that writing changes get made during production. So you have a lot of multi-hyphenates that are producers and writers, or directors and writers, and they're kind of like, oh, right. So you had a bunch of them coming out and saying, like, look, I'm not doing any of this work, even though, they're supposed to do their directing duties or their producing duties that are seen as outside of the writing. They're all kind of saying, it's all writing, right? You can't separate them. And then there is some truth to that. There's people who've made the other decision as well. But so what's happened is, though, a lot of those productions have ended up shutting down as well. But so those were happening to some extent in the early days of the strike, where they were filming things that had been written before. WGA was very strategic about having their people kind of target those productions and create picket lines that IATSE and the Teamsters wouldn't cross to kind of shut them down, at least disrupt the filming of them. So because of that, a lot of them did just decide to, like, put things on hold. But there is still some production happening. So even that just kind of delays the effect. So by the time we get to the point when people are like, oh, there's nothing that I see on TV, or they're actually paying attention, there's months delay between the stoppage of production and the point when there's nothing new to watch. You also see a lot of the streamers, what they're doing is, as you probably noticed on Netflix as well over the past year and a half already, even they've gone to obtaining a ton of foreign content. If you go and you look through Netflix, like the top, like a lot of the new
I noticed that.
A lot of it, that's because it's cheaper and because whatever. So it's an easy way to bulk up their catalog.
Yeah, but I'm thinking it's stuff that they will say this is for Zenny. I'm thinking I don't want that.
Right.
That's wild. I didn't know that, Victoria.
Yeah. So a lot of what they're telling their shareholders, and they're telling people, is like, oh, we have, tons of stuff in the can, and we have tons of foreign content to, whatever. We're not worried about it. So, and then there is truth to that, right? There is a lot of stuff in the can that's already been shot that's going to still be coming out, and there is a lot of foreign content. So it may take a minute for the average viewer to notice that anything's different, right? Because of that delay. And also just depending on, we also have reality TV still happening, right? So that's what the networks are doing. Like Big Brother, it usually airs later in the fall. They're going to start airing it now, right? Or Survivor and all those things, because they're trying to fill up their schedule with what they can use. So they're going to use reality TV, they're going to use foreign stuff, they're going to use whatever sports on the networks, all that kind of stuff to kind of make it so that the average person doesn't notice, right? So yeah, it'll be a minute before it really starts to affect maybe people, or the average person becomes really aware of it. But like you said, there are implications beyond that, right? Like in terms of Comic-Con's affected, in terms of like premieres and red carpet and whatever and stuff like that for events. Like it definitely has affected the event kind of situation, because you have writers that can't do press for stuff. If SAG goes on strike, then actors won't be able to do press for anything that's coming out. So
that's what I'm getting at, right?
Yes, correct.
So where are we with SAG? I mean, we know
SAG has, today's 29th. So SAG has today and tomorrow to reach a deal with AMTPA, and there's kind of three possible scenarios. Scenario A, they will reach a tentative deal, that then they will present to the board to approve. And if the board approves it, which it probably will if they get to that point, then it will be sent to the members to ratify, which is the same process we just saw with the DGA, the Directors Guild. So the DGA reached a tentative deal. They took it to the board unanimously approved it. They took it to their members. It was like 2 weeks for them to vote, and 82% of them approved it. So then that deal is now done. So SAG will go through a similar process if they come to a deal. The second option is that they don't have a deal yet, but talks are going well, and they feel like they just need a few more days to iron it out. So they will both agree to extend that deadline, that June 30th deadline, for a few more days or another week or whatever, to kind of finalize the deal. And then again, that same process. The third option is they're too far away. They don't think that there's, SAG doesn't feel like they're making progress, or that they're going to come to some kind of agreement in the next couple of days to extend it, and then SAG will strike. So those are kind of the three options. So we did get an update, the membership of SAG. We got an update from Fran Drescher, who's our president, weirdly, whatever, a few days ago, saying that negotiations were going well. So that's what she said, which is kind of weird to say in the middle of negotiations, but whatever.
Why do you think she'd do that?
I'm not really sure. She's done a couple things during this process that have made me go, So TBD on that.
I really elaborate on that.
Sure. Yeah, totally. So early days, like maybe week 1 or 2 of the WGA strike, she was out picketing and showing her support and whatnot, and somebody was interviewing her and asking her, so do you think this what do you think this means in terms of SAG? Like, how is this affecting like your contract negotiations that will happen, or like, do you have any thoughts on how this is going to affect SAG, or how they're similar or whatever? And she kind of made this comment about how writers have very specific needs, and SAG has very different needs, and so she's not worried about it. She thinks it'll be a very different situation, which was not received well by many, including myself, because with the exception of the size of writers' rooms and like minimum staffing and length of writers' rooms, the issues among the DGA, the WGA, and SAG are all the same. AI, residuals, all this kind of stuff, wanting data release, like there's way more that we're all having in common than that we have different. So a lot of people were kind of like taken aback by that statement, and it didn't sit well. She got a lot of backlash in the press, a lot of backlash on social media. So then she very quickly came out and like said something else. There was also an interview, saying like, oh, we stand in support and whatever, and politics, typical stuff. Then there was an interview with her, and it was like Entertainment Weekly, I think, or somewhere like that, talking about how she hopes the strike is over soon so she can get back to planning the nanny reunion.
Yeah.
So, just a little bit tone deaf, if you thank you. Okay, so just a little bit tone deaf, if you ask me personally. It just seems very self-serving. Like, this is not the time to worry about your nanny reunion. Like, this is like a way bigger issues at stake for us as an industry. People and their livelihoods, and like the future of this industry as a whole and as a creative. So I felt that was very tone deaf. So these are two of the things that I personally have been like, oh. So similarly, people felt weirdly about so she sent a video. It was her and
who elected her though?
The membership. We did,
What happened to my boy Eric? I thought he was going to be the prez.
No, it was between her and Matthew Modine. Those were our choices.
Oh my lord. Oh.
SAG is a special place. So yeah, what are you gonna do? It's very much like the political system. It's very much like our political system in this country, where you have two parties in SAG.
I didn't know this. This is great. Please.
Yeah, it's very much, it's politics is politics. It's fascinating. So, obviously the president has to be a member of SAG. I wish we would just elect like an entertainment attorney, or somebody who's not like a celebrity-ish type person. Like we have tons of lawyers in SAG. Like I like somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, not just like a face of whatever. So that's my opinion. But that's my opinion. But we basically have two people to choose from, much like we do in the presidential election. So sure, you can vote for anybody you want, but like, you know, it's going to be one of those two parties that wins, right? So yeah, we had, I can't remember, sorry, I've forgotten the names of the two parties, but yeah, it was Matthew Modine for one party and Fran Drescher for the other party. And then you vote for like them and their ticket for, you know, for president, for all the various options. Again, much like our political system as a country. So yes, so those were our choices. So Fran Drescher is our president. And then this, so her and her second, they sent a video out to the SAG membership, where she kind of looks like a whatever. I should probably keep my opinions to myself if I want to have a career in this business. But I'm not good.
I was trying to help you out actually by
yeah,
like SAG-AFTRA parties, and I was getting viewing parties.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, like political parties. So she sent a video out to the membership saying like, you know, negotiations are going great, whatever. But she kind of looked like a hostage, like, you know, she looked it was a little weird. So people had a little bit of a strange reaction to that as well. And so in response to that, you might have heard about this letter that all the celebrities have been signing saying like, hey, now is not the time to take something in the middle. Now is the time to be strong and get what we need. That like Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lawrence and like 1,000 big, huge A-list celebrities have signed, that they sent to the SAG leadership saying like, we are ready, like the membership wants a deal and we are ready to strike if they don't give us what we want. And so this is not the time to like take something in the middle, right? Yes. Yes. Yeah. There you go. Exactly.
Membership first. Yeah.
Exactly. So those are the two like political parties of SAG. So yeah. So basically, this membership. Yeah.
Are you in both? Which one are you in?
I'm not in. It's like, you know, I guess I'm unregistered. I'm just in SAG. You know, it's like you have to register for a party unless I was running for an office or like a spot on like a local LA whatever. Then I would have to pick a side. But I don't. Yeah.
So where, I mean, call balls and strikes. What do you think is going to happen?
It's interesting. So before I'm all over the place, like depending on the day. So I would love for, look, we want a deal. No one wants a strike, right? We want to get what we're owed. But I am skeptical that we will be offered a deal that is really something transformative that we should take. So I would love to see us strike if that's the case. I also, I feel that SAG often, like the DGA, no offense, whatever, these are my opinions again. I should keep my mouth shut, but I'm not good at it. I would love to see us show some backbone and like actually stand up, because I think in general, we're a union that's very like pushed over very easily. And I've seen it in the past in my experiences with this union. So I would like to see us show some cojones and like actually freaking stand up to something. So for that reason alone, I would love to see us strike again, if needed, not just for funsies. No one's out there like, yay, let's have a strike for fun on a Tuesday, you know?
Yeah. Do they have
also because I think, sorry?
Do they have the money to afford a strike, or they can say, hey, look, we'll strike and we'll pay out X amount for X amount of time?
There's support funds and whatever. Obviously, it's a hardship on everybody. It's never enough money. It never goes far enough. Also, there's other unions, you know, like IATSE and Teamsters that are affected and cater. The strike affects so many businesses and so many people outside of the unions that are striking. So there are funds and grants and things set in place. But again, it's, you know, it's kind of like unemployment, right? It's not like you can't live off of, like, it's not money that's going to equal what people are making when they're actually working.
Right,
but it is money to help like tide people over. That does exist, and those are in place. I also think that another benefit of SAG striking would be that this whole thing would end quicker, because that would basically force us to stop all production. Now all those few projects that are filming still, that have been written before or whatever, like nobody can go forward with anything because actors can't be working. So it stops everything in its tracks. So I think the fact that it would do that is going to force AMTPA to come back to the table and reevaluate things and whatever. It's going to hit them harder. It's going to have a stronger impact. Also, the kind of the public perception and the buzz around the strike and the whatever, like there's been a lot of polls and stuff, like people are very much in support of the writers and the writers strike in America in general. Because I think it's a moment in time. You know, I actually was reading in the last 3 years, we've had more organized, like labor union organizations and strikes than we've had since the 1940s, because this is a time when the gap between, you know, the middle class is being eliminated, the gap between the rich and the poor is widening every day, and people are sick of taking it, you know, and we have insane inflation. No one can afford to, you know, everything is crazy. It's a moment in time where the government
is not working. It's like,
exactly. We
you
have
know,
some things that need to be tweaked,
yeah.
right? All around. So this is not just really about the writers. It's not just about the actors. Because I know people may feel some kind of way. They think that we're all like, rolling in dough and rich. And I get it. We're not necessarily the most sympathetic group, but I think that people are sympathizing with the fact that like it's basically like the average working person against the greedy CEO. And I think everybody can understand that, right? Like everyone can understand the injustice and like the average person being squeezed out and being reduced and whatever, and Zaslav on a yacht, whatever, all like just the gap and the exploitation. I think
I'm glad you mentioned that because like we're recovering. My company's recovering from the pandemic,
yeah.
and I have to be here as a caregiver for my mom, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard to. I've got one client, then they had to reduce that client. Lost, his client last year, and what I see is the people who say you can just go out and get a job and walk into a place. So let's say then you do that, and what you find is if it happens to be Kroger, they're asking you to do 10 different things on one paycheck. Literally
Correct.
the work of 10 people, and it's inhumanly, it's an inhuman ask. And then at some point, you've got automation already come in, even if it's not robotic yet, right? And then you have a government that well, all this started because of the pandemic.
Correct.
So if I pick up a phone, and prior to that, if I pick up a phone, make a service call for AT&T, I'm calling the Philippines, which means my money is going up the door, right?
Yes.
And I've got a server that runs my blogs, which this is on in part automatically. But the server, even though the server is located in Houston, the people that HostGator hired are in the Philippines or
Or
India
India
or India,
or wherever.
right?
Absolutely.
Which means, among other things, there is no necessary policy to say, "Hey, look, it would be cool if you hired people who look like black folks," because you know it's the Philippines,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
this has weak, or you can't say, "Hey, look, I want you to hire more women because it's another country." Uh, so it's a frightening situation we're in, and what bothers me is that the government can fix this, right? And yet, right after the pandemic, where we told everybody to close their businesses, but even I wrote to a friend of mine who's very up in high politics. What the heck? I'm good friends with the governor of California since
Mm-hmm.
'98, and I was
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, if you're going to close the businesses, you might want to compensate them.
Right. Because you know how hard it is, like for restaurants or small businesses or whatever. What
Yeah,
we've basically done is we've handicapped
right.
small businesses.
We cut the legs out from
Exactly.
under the
Like down.
American economy. It cost us, by my estimation, 9.8 trillion, and we've done nothing about it. And now we're putting people against each other. So now we
Correct.
have all these strikes. That's what bothers me. And
Yes.
it's like, and look, I'm not saying I'm not saying don't strike at all. I'm not saying you have to, because it makes noise to the government to do these things. My question to you is, I am looking at an industrial cataclysm. Am I wrong to think that way?
I mean, who knows? Certainly, it is an interesting time to be alive, right? It's an interesting time for yes, all of these things. So I don't know. Certainly, it feels in so many
It's
ways.
horrifying.
Yeah, it can be, and we've seen this. We've seen this so many scenarios. Again, we're having this happening with the labor movement now, but we had it happening with race and with whatever. I think what happened is the pandemic has created a circumstance or an environment or atmosphere that has shown the light on a lot of things that are needing attention and not working, perhaps as
Right,
we would like them to work in this
right.
country. Perhaps across the globe. So I think that that's what's happened is that people's patience for these things has run out, and you have that compounded with the impact of like a weak economy and inflation and all these things. So people are like just generally fed up. So I think that is contributing to this atmosphere of whether it's riots or whether it's protesting in the streets or picketing or whatever the hell, where people are sick of taking bullshit, right? So that is definitely impacted us in many ways. We've seen in many sectors. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but definitely it feels like a moment in time. I think, and that was kind of the point of the letter that these actors have signed, and like everybody feels the importance of this and the fact that like eyeballs are on it. And again, it's about more than just the writers and the actors and whatever. It's about people trying to have a livelihood that is sustainable
Yeah.
in this era of corporate greed and publicly traded companies and whatever, everyone obsessed with
and that government
shareholder value. Yeah. So it's people saying like, look, is this going to be the world that we're making? Is this it? Or like, are we going to take care of people and make it so that we can have a living and create entertainment and, you know what I mean? Create the stories that feed us.
To which, let me ask you this then. Let's say SAG decides to strike. From the perspective of a person who's done a bunch of red carpets, including the Night of 100 Stars and everything, does that kill the red carpet circuit?
Yeah, so basically what happens is that actors will be by order of the strike, same the way the writers are now. So this is pre-Emmy season right now in LA. Yeah. Where we have all the FYC events, the for your consideration events. So the showrunners and the writers are not able to attend any of those because they're striking. So that's considered promotion for the stuff. So like you've seen that the panels have kind of gone forward. They didn't cancel the events. They were kind of unsure on what they would do, but they basically gone forward. But like you're not seeing any of the writers and the creators there that would normally be there. So the same thing will be true for actors. Actors will not be allowed by the by the letter of the law of like what it means to strike for the union. They will not be allowed to do promotional work for their projects. So that includes, any kind of press, any kind of marketing, any kind of
not even a live stream remotely.
No, like they can't do any marketing for their projects because that's benefiting the studios. So so it will absolutely affect that. Yes.
Do you see the actors, if this goes on to a point where the studios become damaged and film financiers are looking for a different outlet, do you see the actors basically forming their own studio outlets?
I mean, I think that's like, it's easy to say and really hard to do. So I think that, everyone's like, no, just make your own network, make your own whatever. Like, great in theory, but way easier said than done. So I don't think that that's something that's like,
that's well said. That's well said, you know?
So I think this is not a quick fix scenario. You know what I mean? There is no quick fix to it, unfortunately.
Now, I want to, before we get out of here, talk about your next project. You've been working on something.
Totally shifting gears. Now we do shameless self-promotion. Yeah, so yes, I have a project called Kobo's.
We got to get it in before it's too late, right?
Get it in real quick. So yes, since you don't have anything else to watch when this comes out. So it is currently on the festival circuit. So we had our premiere a few months ago at Horror Hound Film Festival where we won Best Feature and Judges' Choice.
Yeah.
Thank you, which are like the two best.
Jessica Dwyer by chance, or did you guys cross paths at all? Or
with who?
Jessica Dwyer is our VIP entertainment vlogger.
I don't know. I don't think so.
She's got a shock of blonde hair. I will put up a image of her video.
Yeah, I mean, there were a bunch of like horror vloggers and stuff there that I met, but I don't recall her specifically. But yeah, I've done a ton of podcasts and stuff since then. People were great. It was really nice to meet. I love the horror community. Everyone is so awesome. So we are also going to be, the next one we'll be in is called Days of the Dead. We're just in, they have two screenings. They have one in Indianapolis and one in Los Angeles. So we just last weekend were at the Indianapolis one, and we'll be here in LA at the end of August. And then we'll hear back about some other festivals maybe that we'll have. So probably next year, the movie will be, early next year will be available for people to actually see.
And tell them again what it's about.
So it's about a couple that, with a rocky relationship, they drive drunk and hit a jogger, and they take him to bury him, in this remote location. And it turns out, we'll just leave it there. We'll leave it there. Horror things ensue because I don't want to give anything away. So yeah, it's kind of about this couple whose relationship is crumbling, and then just the added stress of the circumstances of having killed someone and trying to decide what to do about it. So yeah, it's great. Jamie Bernadette is in it, who's a beloved horror actress. She's fantastic. She was great to work with. It's lots of fun. Yeah. And we have an Emmy award-winning DP. So yeah, it's just great. It looks really good. Hopefully people like it.
That's Jessica Dwyer.
Okay. I don't think she was there. Was she there?
She was at Horror Hound. Yeah. I'm pretty certain she was. Yeah.
Maybe. I definitely didn't cross paths with her. No.
I think she was. It's like, I shot in the dark. I don't think if I call her real quick, she may be available, but, she might be working. I get all these weird spam calls. I'm getting like 5 or 6 days all of a sudden.
More spam calls than real calls, right?
Yeah. And I don't answer any of them. Holy. And then you have, folks, if you haven't seen Lexi, see it. It's an awesome movie. It's best seen in a dark room. Well, don't see it in a dark room. Don't see it. Let me forget I said that.
See it however you enjoy your spookies. Enjoy Lexi that way. Yeah, it's on Tubi and Amazon and all the usual places for rent and purchase a Tubi. You can watch it for free with ads, all that good stuff.
And then Disgruntled, you won 38. Oh, I counted 38 awards from Disgruntled, according to your own.
You mean Disgraced?
Disgraced. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah. Is that, you counted them? That's cool. I knew it was like.
I was getting ready for this. I was going to do that announcement, and I was kind of slow rolling into this, and you helped me out by just jumping in. I thought,
I'm like, let me just get to it.
Go with it.
Yes, gotta roll with it. Disgrace is now available also on Tubi and Amazon. It's out in the world as well, so you can check that out. That's a dark comedy kind of satirizing. There we go, worked it out. Satirizing the industry.
Are you teaching writing now, or were you?
No, I don't teach writing, but what I do is I have a business that helps actors who want to get into producing their own content, kind of navigate what that looks like. If somebody wants to make a short film or a web series or eventually a feature, what they need to learn or what they need to do. So a little bit of writing, like a little, but it's more about like.
How do we find out about that? That's
yeah. People can just reach out, find me on my website and reach out. It kind of I've always loved that, like helping people, and then we're just got out, and people started asking me if I would consider helping them. I want to make a short film, whatever. So I was like, oh, this is actually great, and I love it. So it's really cool to help people achieve something that they've been wanting to do and feel supported in that. It's also, I know for me, the process of transitioning into or just writing and producing has been so empowering for me as an actress. You're so much at the mercy of other people's decisions as an actor. So much of it is not in your control. People's whims and decisions and whatever, and it can kind of start to affect your, like, I don't know, your sense of worth or your sense of autonomy. So for me, being able to step into something where I have control over the role I'm putting myself in and the project I'm creating and the environment on set, setting the tone and making sure like it's a fun environment and treating people the way I wish I was treated, and all those things for me has been personally so empowering and amazing. So I think other people find that when they step into it as well. It also gives you a confidence in your work as an actor, because I know for me, like now when I'm on set and I'm hired just to act, I'm like, all I gotta do is act. Usually I'm producing and I'm, directing and I'm doing like 18 things. So I'm like, now I have one thing to do. Like, great. It just gives you, I think, a confidence in that. So it's really amazing to be able to help people on that journey and kind of see how they come into themselves and, the confidence that they get from having an idea of something and being afraid to do it and then actually, completing something and getting it in the world. So, yeah. And
one other thing before Cal 42, USC 35.
Is that your prediction?
That's my prediction.
Okay, we'll see. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. Not in this era. We'll see. I'm really hoping that we.
USC went to Cal. I was on the alumni board for 98 through 2004. Yeah.
Yes, and I went to
she's a fight on. I'm gonna go there.
I always wear blue like UCLA, but it's not my fault. I just like that color. But yeah, I'm a Trojan.
Yeah, but you guys, you guys have left the Pac-12.
Well, not yet. One more year. That's why I really hope we get into the Pac-12 championship so I can go. Me and my husband spontaneously ended up going to the championship game last year. It was so fun. We had so much fun. So I really hope we get in one more time just so I can do that for the last hurrah. And then we'll be in the Big Ten. And then I have a lot of family who my mom went to Ohio State. A lot of my family went to Ohio State and Michigan State. So it'll be fun in that way.
So you look forward to that more than playing Cal and Stanford?
Boom. I mean, we're still going to play our rivals. We're still going to play UCLA, Notre Dame, and Cal and Stanford every other year. So we'll still have the rivalry games. But yeah.
I even got an email from a guy, it's called Right for California, and he was talking about how alums were upset that the traditional rivalry of, Cal versus UCLA and so on would be wrecked. And I thought, oh no, because I was under the impression, it wasn't going to be. So
no, it's not going to be. They're maintaining their rivalries. They're being.
I was under the impression. Yeah, I was under the impression it wasn't going to be, and now they're saying it was. So I got all confused because I haven't had a chance to get the commissioner of the Pac-12 on yet. So anyway.
It's my understanding that, like, again, I don't know about all of them every year, but that like the rivalries that we get, like certainly, so USC and UCLA are both going, right? So that's going to be intact. But that the Cal Stanford things would at least be like one of them each year kind of a situation. Go ahead. Yeah, and for us, because we also have the Notre Dame, which isn't, they're not in any conference. We have that rivalry as well. So that's going to be maintained as well. So I think that those will just be the the out of conference games, non-conference games. So
the monetary haves versus the monetary have-nots. Another, process.
The rich get richer, baby, in football or television, it seems.
It has a lot of money, so we'll see. I think Stanford might emerge to be the champion. That's my prediction. I just took
Well,
one look at their
did
practice.
they fire David Shaw, or did David Shaw just
Yeah,
leave?
they fired my friend.
Yeah, I thought so.
Because,
Interesting.
well, it's 3 straight years of losing records, and then a friend of mine who's a Stanford Booster was saying that they thought Dave's offensive approach was becoming was too conservative. He wasn't.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, it's it's being a college football coach is tough, dude. You don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of leeway. You got to get results pretty quick. And even if you have like a track record of being amazing, if you're dipping for like just a couple seasons, you're out of there. I do not envy college football coaches. It's a lot of money, sure, but that seems like a high stress job.
But he got paid well. He was pulling out $5 million a year.
Yeah,
and I think he had some other complications, I think, in terms of family and cancer that I think were consuming him, and all that one. So
yeah, it's too bad that he had a downturn, because I think under him they did, Stanford had some of their best seasons.
Ever. He was the winningest coach in Stanford football history.
Yeah.
And what I liked about Dave on a personal level is I would share ideas with him, whereas a friend of mine introduced me to, and I'll just say this, to Coach Wilcox, and Coach kind of acted like he was quasi-friendly. I met him after the big game, and I don't want to mention who introduced us, but Coach was okay, but he wasn't really interested in talking X's and O's. Like, I can talk X's and O's with Dave Shaw.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, and I think, frankly speaking, a lot of it has to do with both of us being African American.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, it's what happens when you deal with discrimination around you, and then you meet somebody and you think, hey, I can talk to this person.
100%.
And so I sent him my playbook, but Wilcox didn't have that, and I don't know what his makeup is. I don't want to make I don't know what his makeup is. All I know is, as a Cal coach, he wasn't as accessible to ideas.
Yeah.
And I have a long history. I, go all the way back to somewhere in the 19s. Not I remember that, but growing up around there, and then went to school there, grad school in 85, graduated in 87, was recruited to be on my board in 98 and all that stuff. So yeah. So let's hope that this all turns out properly. Would you like to see the governor get involved in this, the governor of California?
It's interesting. They've made some statements, like saying with I believe Karen Bass has as well, but nobody's really like done anything to put pressure on them to the extent that they could. So yeah, I was reading some articles about that, how people are kind of wondering if that will happen or why it hasn't, or certainly I think it would be it's always beneficial just to have the support of wherever you can get the support, right? So yeah, I don't know that it will matter in the sense of I don't know that it will matter for AMSA, but like I don't know that just because the politician comes down and says like, hey guys, get it together, that they're really going to do anything, or all of a sudden find their conscience and be like, yeah, okay, we'll give you guys great deals. But I think it matters from the sense of like just feeling supported and people feeling, like they have the government in their corner.
Paying attention.
Yeah, and exactly, having eyeballs on it and all that. So yeah, I think we'll see what happens, if that changes, if SAG has to strike too, if then they become more invested in it, because certainly it affects the California economy in a huge way. So Film LA, which is in control of the permits that go out, every week, permit requests for filming. So we've had none. We're down to nothing. So there's currently no film and television filming in LA right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, on that level, there are no permit requests for the last 2 periods. 0 permit requests.
Wow.
So that tells you how much the industry has ground down.
Hey, have you been out here lately to Georgia?
No, I just got back from I was in DC and I was in New York. So I just got back from the East Coast. But no, when was I in Atlanta last? It's been a minute since I've been to Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll see if we get into any of the Atlanta horror festivals. We'll be out there for that. But
okay, yeah. I mean, it seems like I haven't reviewed how much there's activity, I know.
For sure, because first of all, it's a right to work state, right? So it's a different environment. It's much different atmosphere. So since LA has been shut down and New York is mostly shut down, what they've done is they've sent some people to like New Mexico and Georgia and Louisiana to try to target the shows that are currently still filming, the same way that they did for our shows. So we'll see if that has an impact or whatever, but certainly it's less, just because of the nature of the state and the politics there, right? It's a different situation as far as unions are concerned and as far as like support goes. So yeah, certainly there is still stuff filming, but even then, much less. Like the only things that can film still, even then, are the things that have been written before the strike started.
Wow. Thank you for joining me this wild day
Yeah.
where, for the first time in history, affirmative action, they say, has been struck down. I'm trying to
Oh my God. What is, yeah, we are,
like,
it's a weird time to be alive, man. It's a weird time to be alive.
But then they say you can mention your race in an essay.
You can mention your race in an essay, but it can't be used in the decision making. So like,
yeah, wrap your head around that one.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I get into Cal grad school. I was concerned, just to show you where I sit, of being an affirmative action hire. I was number one on the wait list for planning school, number one in the country. And Kate Bach assured me that was not the reason. She said it was your essay.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was on the essay review board for the Cal City Planning grad school.
Yeah.
So we read what people
Essays.
write. Yeah, they matter. So when I heard, I haven't read the decision yet, but I heard that, thought, do they know what? I said, maybe they have to. Either they do, or they were just being stupid. I have to believe that they actually knew what they were doing and gave everybody an out.
I guess, but in which case, if you're giving them an out, what's the point of, I don't know, whatever. These are, I don't know. Again, it is a strange time to be alive.
Yeah.
I feel like daily you're like,
Exactly.
So, right. Yeah. I really want humanity to get it together. And like, I have one rule I live by, which is don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick.
That's a great rule.
It seems pretty simple, right? It kind of covers everything. So I feel like people just need to ask themselves, am I being a dick right now? Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, can we just get it together and like treat each other with respect and compassion, and also just not assume the worst of everybody? You know what I mean? Because it's a weird time. I also feel like everyone gets so obsessed with like the boxes that we check and the differences that we have, and we forget that like ultimately we are all human, and the shared experience of being a human makes us have much more in common than we ever have apart, regardless of any boxes we may or may not check or any differences we may have. Like the human experience is the human experience, and we all share that, right? So you'd think it would allow us to have a little common ground, maybe, and yet.
That gets me into like, I'm anti-texting, although I have to do it, but for that reason, Okay, folks, so stick around. We'll talk off camera. Excuse me. Bless you. Don't catch a cold. On everything else, folks. Follow this lady's work. Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm just at Victoria Vertuga on all the places. So on all the social media stuff. You want to watch Disgraced, again, that's available on Tubi, Amazon, all the usual things. Lexi, also available there. My next project is Cold Blows the Wind. That should be out next year sometime. But yeah, follow me on at Victoria Vertuga, anywhere to keep tabs on what's happening.
.com, right?
Yeah, VictoriaVertuga.com. Yeah, and at Victoria Vertuga on all the social platforms.
And there it is, folks.
Beautiful.
We can do that. Yeah. Leave that. Okay. You don't have to move a muscle. Folks, that ends this broadcast. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube. Please bookmark Zenny62.com, OaklandNews.nowblog.com, and OaklandNewsOnline.com. And thank you. We'll see you. That was great.